To be unrelated at birth.
Well, Adam, this is a special week. There's no fun, cool intro I'm going to do. I usually do a couple of fun, jazzy, quips, some funny jokes. Okay, fine.
Sorry, jazzy quips. You threw me off with that one. Okay, jazzy quips.
Jazzy quips. You want
the jazzy quipster from now on. That's your new nickname.
No, I already have enough nicknames, Adam. We can't do that. Another one. All right, so we'll get into it. My name is Dave. I am, as always, the golden voice of the South, the human jukebox from the top of the state of Alabama, because I am on top of this podcasting game. Kind of. All right. And then, as always, I am joined by my friend, Mr. Adam Brother Russell. We're just going to go with Brother Russell. You want to do Phenomenal Brother still, or we want to just go Brother?
Just go with Brother. That's fine. It's cool.
Right,
I'm down with it.
Listen, brother. All right. So the brother, all the way from the middle of the state of Florida, St. Cloud, House of Mouse that's closed, making me sad.
The mouse is still in the house. It's just nobody else is there with him.
I know, but today I got that cabin fever. I was texting you memes of I had to get out of the house, and you were telling me to get in the house.
Yes, please.
No, Disney needs to come open in about a month. Actually, a month and a half is when Disney needs to open.
We'll see what happens.
Okay, fine. You're not going to tell me to stay home?
No.
Okay, fine.
I already told you what I thought about your vacation, but
I know. All right, so I'm honored tonight because I've been wanting to do a show like this always. Well, for the past couple of weeks. We're going to be real tonight. We're not going to be the Phenomenal Brother, the Golden Voice of the South. We're going to be Dave and Adam tonight because this is Easter week. This is Holy Week. This is a week that's very special for our faith and very special for Christians all around the world. And because of that, I have the honor of having my pastor on, Paul Whaley from Summit Crossing. Paul, what's going on?
What's up? What's up, guys? It's a privilege to be on your show with you. Your intro, you warned me about the nicknames. That was epic, bro.
Nice.
That's actually shorter than we normally go, Paul. So
I could tell. You held back, but it still was epic.
Well, I'm feeling a little bit bad. I poured a glass of bourbon as I'm sitting here. It's like, oh, my pastor's watching me. Sorry.
I love that. It just tells me how much you know me, so that really makes me feel good.
That is true. That is true.
It's probably for the best. You don't want to see him when he records on coffee, trust me.
I thought about it just to be that good kid, good guy. But anyway, Paul, these last month, I guess, has been some trying times in the world. And I think what was it, 3 weeks ago at Summit Crossing, we decided to shut the doors to the sanctuary and start doing virtual church. And I think we were probably some of the first ones here in Huntsville to do it.
Yeah, I think we were, and I say that because I had several pastors actually call me the day we shot a video, put it out, that we were going to gather online. I had a couple of pastors call me that day, said, have you lost your mind? Are you crazy? This is aren't you getting ahead of the game? I'm like, guys, the time is now for us to act. The most loving thing we can do is to do this. And I had a pastor calling back later that night and said, hey man, you guys are actually out in front. We just had a long meeting with the mayor and he's asking churches to do this. So I guess you guys knew something we didn't, but we've got some leaders that were just praying through it and thinking, how can we get out in front of this thing? And that's where we landed.
Yeah. And I appreciate that because, I think I said something on my Facebook when I shared that video that you're talking about. I'm proud to go to a church where not only do you worry about our spiritual health, but you worry about our physical health as well. And I think a lot of your thoughts and prayers went into that point itself, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is, I'm sure we'll get into this, Dave. What's so interesting about this whole deal, it'd be one thing if we were asking our people to risk your life and come to church, but it's a different storyline when you're risking someone else's life by coming to church.
Yeah,
right.
And that's a line we've never had to cross and deal with. So when you start thinking through that lens, you start actually thinking through Jesus' commands to love your neighbor as yourself. That's actually what he's talking about. That's how we're going to love our neighbor right now. It's by staying home. So it kind of feels counterintuitive to the Christian life. I mean, we're after this whole lay your life down. That's kind of what Jesus called us to do. But this is actually a time for us to think differently. It is actually a way for us to lay our life down and to stay at home.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's hard to get across, and I'm not sure everybody's getting it, but that's kind of where we've landed.
Yeah, it's been hard in Florida, especially because the governor signed a stay-at-home order. But in that order, because, separation of church and state and the way the government runs in America, it says in there that churches are exempt from that. And the wording and the verbiage says that.
Right.
But all the churches have done the right thing, to your point, and known that it's upon them ultimately to make the right decision, to do the right thing. But there have been pastors in Tampa, I think a lot of other states have seen that too, where people have struggled with that a little bit. But definitely I agree, the right thing to do. So.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like most churches are coming online. Thank the Lord for that.
Yep.
Yeah. So Paul, with this, a lot of people, I think Adam and I and you, I think are blessed where our jobs are not safe, but we don't have to really worry that much about losing our job in this environment. But 6.6 million people, the last numbers I've heard, have filed for unemployment. People are staying at home. You're having to be there with your kids that you're not used to being around 24/7. You're now a homeschool teacher. What can we say as Christians? What's the best way to minister to these people? We can't go out and see, but what's the best way we can minister to these people? And how can we show hope to a world that really has no hope right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. It's like, for the believer, there's really the message of hope is there's such grit and reality to it for the believer, because we know Jesus has ultimately overcome this world, disease, darkness, ultimately our sin. So even though we walk through this trying time, for a believer, we know that not only is this temporary, we hope to get back to life, normal life, whatever that looks like in a month or two. But ultimately, life is secured in Him. So for the believer, we just keep going back to that truth and remind ourselves of the good news, and we rest in that, and we don't ignore what we're in. We don't ignore our emotions and our feelings and push those back. I mean, we kind of own it, but we lay it at the feet of Jesus, and because that's what He came to do, is lay His life down so that we could have peace and rest in Him. So we abide in Him through these times. So the message that goes out for the world, generically, it's a tough call, because, and here, I guess, is what I would say to this. This is what I'm praying for, that all our securities, all the things that have been false securities for the world, they're kind of crumbling right now. Mm-hmm. So there actually is great hope, because those faulty foundations, if you will, are caving in. And I'm hopeful that people will turn vertically and see that there actually is hope in the one that came to rescue us from this. So that would be the message I hope that people will hear. And my prayer is that Christians will live that out, that we'll live a life that is so honoring to the Lord, and it actually draws people in by not pointing the finger, but actually pulling them in by the way we love them, and we actually lay our life down for them as well. So that's where I would start with that grandiose question. I mean, for the life of the believer, it's actually, Dave, a time for us to really lean in and grow through this time. When you study church history, when you look back through the record books and how the church has grown, it's always been through times of persecution. So it may sound kind of twisted for me to say this, but in a sense, I'm kind of jacked up about it, because I think the Lord is up to something here. Yeah. And I'm not saying that He caused this coronavirus to happen, but I also will tell you that I don't believe for a second He's caught off guard by it. And it will be used for our good and for His glory. And so, man, I just think that during this time of introspection and solitude, that it's a time for us to lean in and listen a little bit and see what God has for us.
Yeah, I love that. All throughout the Bible and all throughout history, world history, beauty comes from ashes. And like you said, I don't think God, okay, well, there's this whole, did God cause it or did it happen? Did God allow it to happen type question here? But yes, you're right. This isn't a mystery to God. God knew that this was about to happen, but God uses the ashes of the world for His beauty.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's amazing to me how that happens all the time.
Well, I didn't mean to create a rabbit hole for us for the whole.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
We could go down that hole quick, but it's amazing to me again. Just I know our culture in times like this tends to ask the question, well, okay, God, where are you? The world is suffering, and if you're real and on the throne, why don't you do something? And actually, he already did. He hung on a cross for this moment and for billions of moments like this. But it's also a time for us to recognize and kind of trace back the brokenness, which you have to trace it all the way back, not to, March 1st when we heard this come out, but you actually have to trace it all the way back to creation in the garden, Genesis 3. And you realize in Genesis 3, when we rebelled against a holy and perfect God, that this world's broken. And so we get caught up in this argument, did God cause it or did he allow it? The reality is we caused it through our sin. We live in a broken and flawed world, which means natural disasters, which means people hurt each other, which means we have to deal with disease. But that's why Jesus came, to not only fix us, but to fix this world.
Yeah.
And so coronavirus will be crushed one day when his new kingdom comes. So I know I'm probably chasing a little bit of a rabbit there, but just wanted to insert that truth.
Look, rabbit holes are chased all the time on this show. So you're fitting in perfectly, Paul. Adam, I think your question before we get into Easter, question actually fits perfectly here. So
yeah, I mean, we've heard several sermons and different readings and things through podcasts and other stuff around like how the Bible says in several places that, trials bring refinement. And you see it in the book of James and in a few other places. And our pastor this past week he was bouncing around between some books and landed in Psalms, and it's 131. And it talks about how your soul is calmed and quieted. And it says like a mother or like a child who is weaned with his mother. And in other translations, it talks about like how a child that no longer cries for its mother's milk. And what we cry for in terms of what our sustenance is in this world. Yeah. And we've put all of those other forms of sustenance aside, and we focus just on God and the gift that he gives us. That is enough to satisfy and to quiet your soul. And I think one of the things that I'm struggling with a little bit, and part of it is because I want to do this at times and I try to catch myself, but I see a lot of people on the conservative side, a lot of people on the Christian side that are focusing purely on the political, purely on the fact that it's an election year or that it's a conspiracy or that, the impact to constitutional rights and those kind of things. And I think I'm having trouble finding a balance in a lot of places between the message of hope and the message of trying to find the refinement in a trial like this and understanding the worldly impacts at the same time. So what do you have any, how do we balance that? How do we make sure that we're paying attention to the impacts it could have on our lives, but at the same time focusing on that hope that's out there? Because right now it seems like it's one or the other. There's not a balance. There's nowhere where you can see that there's two sides to this that need to be focused on.
Yeah, Adam, I don't know if this gets to the heart of your question. Just the both sides of, I guess I call it the spectrum, swinging too hard to the right or too hard to the left, or are we tone deaf? Are we listening to the needs of our culture and what our world's facing?
Yeah.
Are we just trying to preach Jesus down people's throats when people are dying and need medicine? I mean, where's the balance in that? And again, I think that's the reality of what the Christian is called to do in our culture. As Jeremiah talks about this all throughout the gospel writers talk about this. Jesus in his Sermon on the Mount talks about actually we're supposed to be the best citizens in this world. Like he came to bring his kingdom in, and he gives us a glimpse of what that kingdom is going to be like in his Sermon on the Mount. There'll be no more sickness. The blessed are the meek, for they shall see the kingdom of God. Blessed are the persecuted, they shall be comforted. So he gives what he's doing, these two layers. He's kind of giving us a glimpse of what we experience now in Jesus and what we'll experience ultimately in Jesus in his kingdom. And so those that have experienced Jesus now, we get to go out into the world. In a sense, we get to live as signposts pointing to the one that can rescue. So we do that through being generous, through giving money to those that maybe have lost their jobs. So I think more than ever, Christians have an opportunity to actually live the life of Jesus, to live the way of Jesus more than ever by giving up our paychecks for someone that maybe lost their job, feeding the homeless, taking in those that are hurting. So for us to ignore what's going on in the world and just get caught up with some message and kind of pointing fingers through, or, the right or the left, and then just saying, just believe in Jesus and your life will be good. Like, there's so much more to that. The life of a believer is so much more robust than just words. It's a lifestyle. And so that's my prayer, is that Christians will actually see the call of Jesus to actually get in this world, not get out, but actually get in now more than ever and be the best citizens this world has ever seen. And through that, maybe they will see the real Jesus and fall in love with the real Jesus, not some fake, phony Jesus that we've kind of puffed up before. So that's just another hope of mine during this time, is that the whole side of what I would even call conservative Christianity, would just die out, because there's really no place for it. It's not helping the kingdom. So
that's one of my concerns. I guess it's the entire lifestyle you're talking about. Absolutely. That's mind blowing to really dive. That's a whole other rabbit hole, right? I mean, if we could go down with that, that's awesome. But I feel like, if we focus purely at the same time on the political or the conspiracy type stuff that I've seen more from Christians than anybody else right now, I don't want us to hurt our credibility on the back end of this either, because if people are suffering and somebody knows somebody, I mean, one of the things I've seen people say the most when I read comments and look through it is, well, do you know anybody who's directly impacted by this?
Yeah.
No, you don't, because it's not real. I have people at work whose brothers and sisters and cousins have been confirmed to have this. And we're lucky enough to live in states where we don't see it as prevalently, but I work with a lot of people who are in New York, have family in New York, and they have been tested positive. I just don't want us to walk out of this at the same time having a credibility issue that, we ignored this real problem, and now we're going to come to you with the gospel, and is anybody even going to listen,
Yeah, man, I feel you on that. And I've caught myself in several conversations, just to your point, where the conversation was like, are you sure this isn't being blown out of proportion? And I felt like I was coming across this, trying to convince them so much that this is serious, that I was like the one living in fear. And I was this doomsday dude. I'm like, you have to know I'm the farthest thing from a doomsday prepper there is in the world. I mean, that there couldn't be anything further from the truth. So what I'm telling you is, this is serious, and stop watching Fox News for a minute and just get in the Bible and listen to what the Spirit is telling you. And we, as created beings from God Almighty, there are image bearers dying from this disease. And if your heart is hardened to that, then somewhere you've gone off the rails. And so I've just tried to bring it back to the facts of, I don't know if you know anybody personally that has it, but let's look at the facts. How many people have actually died from this virus? And let's start there and realize this is a sobering, serious reality. And let's set aside our political agendas, our political differences, and our conspiracy theories, and let's just live like a Christian right now. And so let's get out into the world and live it out, and stop having these dialogues that aren't helpful for anybody. So that's my take on it, man. That would be my platform, that I would probably get in trouble if I broadcast that too loud, but that's where I'm at on it.
Paul, I want to go down one more rabbit hole, and kind of piggyback off of our last one. So I think it was you and Adam both agreed on this. What are we going to be like after this is over? What will people look at Christians after this is over? Kind of talk to the pastors that we kind of mentioned at the beginning, whose churches are using the loophole of still meeting. Let's doomsday think this. What happens if some of those people in those meetings in that church get coronavirus, and then they go out in the world and this whole thing has phase 2?
Yeah.
Won't the world and the media point to the church and say, look at you, you hypocrites. Yeah. You used your loophole. So what would you kind of say to, let's say you don't know any of these pastors, and I know that, but what would you say to if a pastor came to you and said, hey, I think I'm using this loophole?
Well, it would make me extremely sad and heartbroken to hear that would be a story that would if that was to be a storyline after all this is said and done, that would certainly break my heart. And, right now I'm just praying that pastors are listening, and that, and I do believe they are. I think, as we said at the beginning of our time, that the Big C Church, I do believe is pursuing the Lord on this, is listening to the Spirit on this, and following through what we believe is best. And my prayer is that when it's all said and done, just like the church has done throughout history, in times of chaos and crisis, if the church had not been a part of the city, that particular city, the city wouldn't have made it. And I'm praying that's our mark. We've got an opportunity in our time and history and space and not that we're trying to make a mark for ourselves, but we're trying to make much of Jesus, and he loves his bride, he loves the church. And so I pray when the record books and the history books are written during this time, there will be stories that will far outweigh those, hopefully, minimum stories of those pastors and churches that maybe caused harm, that the other stories will far outweigh it, the churches that not only made wise choices, but got out and actually did something during the situation. I know for us and our leaders, we're praying about right now how we can be like crazy generous to our businesses, to hospitals, to the firemen, to the police officers. Like, we're trying to figure out how we can bless our local businesses, that in a month or two, they're still going to be around because of what at least play some small part in helping them thrive. So that would be my heart on it, Dave. I mean, yeah. I guess emotionally I'd be heartbroken to hear, but I'm hopeful, and I'm praying that the storyline of churches laying their life down and making wise choices based on what honors God would far outweigh some of those stupid decisions that might be made.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get into some happier stuff, if you don't mind. This is Easter. This is a weird Easter, because I was joking with Adam earlier this week and said, hey, what are you wearing for Easter today? Shorts, T-shirt. That's what you're going to wear to your Easter service. Why not? So it's a different type of Easter. We're not going to dress up in our seersucker best. We might not get with our families. Hey, you hush, Adam. We still wear seersucker in the South.
Whatever, you do you, man. You're all good. You do you.
Hey, it is the South. But, what's different about this year's Easter, but what makes it even better?
I love that question. That's where I'm at. As hard as it is to think about not gathering Sunday, and it's actually heartbreaking. In fact, I was just listening to our playlist. I was honing in on what I'm going to be preaching on, and man, I was just getting so pumped and thinking. Can you give me
a preview? What's on the playlist?
Oh man, I shouldn't go there because our worship pastor hasn't finalized, and he may get kicked at me if I.
Oh, Patrick won't get mad. Come on.
But there'll be some Living Hope in there, and Man of Sorrows, and some of my favorite songs.
Oh, awesome!
It's gonna be lit, man.
Hey, by the way, sidetrack. More of Mercy. He needs to play that every week.
Isn't that good stuff?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Okay.
I'll tell him. I'll pass that along.
Yes.
So yeah, man. So just getting over the fact that we're not going to be together, that's hard. But to just again lean in and appreciate the moment. I think what's exciting about this Sunday is I do believe the gospel is going to go out far wider than it ever, at least in recent times and recent years, as far as I can tell. The gospel is going to go out through technology. We've seen a huge spike in people just listening to our live stream on Sunday morning. Obviously people are home listening. They're passing the link along to friends. A lot of my pastor friends are saying the same thing. So I think more than ever, people are actually listening in, which kind of goes back to our original conversation. I think people are looking for hope. I think they're looking for good news in the midst of a sea of bad news. So I'm hoping Easter Sunday, people, even more than ever, Easter Sunday, people are always open to go to church, and they're leaning in, and oftentimes we'll go. The creasters show up. But I think more than ever, people are going to be tuning in. And so I think it's an opportunity for our people to send out our online link to friends and family and get it out there. And, we're going to preach a simple, but hopefully robust gospel message. Jesus is alive, and it's the ultimate good news. There's no better news to hear right now. There's no better news the world needs to hear right now. We think, well, if just a vaccine will come out this year, that's the best news we could hear. But there's going to be something else. The best news of all is that Jesus has conquered it all. And so
Amen.
That is going to be so fun to just celebrate Sunday. We put together kind of some online listening experiences for our people throughout the weekend. Just a couple of things we're doing creatively. We hope will add to our Sunday experiences. We're asking families to take pictures of themselves with their families worshiping, doing a sunrise service together. Even get dressed up in your Sunday best and take pics and send them in. And then we're going to show those pictures like in a montage on Sunday morning, and kind of a way to bring us all together. So we'll do some creative things to make the best of the moment. But ultimately, what makes it better is I think the audience is going to be leaning in more than ever. And I believe that. I'm excited about that. And even though I would not have scripted this as an Easter Sunday in 2020, God knows what's up. And I do believe he's doing something really, really massive right now. So I can't wait to see what it is.
That's great. And I'll tell you, I have not seen, like, since the way we worship at Summit is, we send the kids to their Summit kids and they do their thing. And I while it's nice because I get to hone in and listen to you and get to listen to and worship my way, I'm getting to worship with my little girls now.
That's awesome.
At home. And yes, they're rowdy. Yes, they run around, but I get to see Ellie, my 5-year-old, when we sing, stand up and put her hands up.
Yep.
And that is a special moment. You talked about last week, special moments that are etched in your brain.
Yep.
With your 3 kids.
Yep.
That's always going to be a special moment that I'm going to have etched in my brain that would not have had this chance if coronavirus wasn't here.
That's great, dude. Yeah, and never forget that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's cool to see moments that you didn't think that you would have, because God has allowed a situation to happen.
Absolutely.
So I do think that Easter is going to be great. It's going to be different because we won't be able to have those Easter egg hunts with our family. We won't have the ham and green beans and all that with your entire relatives around. But I saw a meme the other day, and I'm going to butcher it, but it said, "Oh, you're sad that the church is empty? Well, guess what? The tomb was too."
That's good.
So it's a different way of teaching and preaching that resurrection story.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw one meme that said the church has left the building, and I chuckled at that, and it's really true. The church is scattered right now, and when the church scattered in Acts at chapter 8, it blew up. And so that's what we're praying, that as we're scattered, our neighborhoods will never be the same. Our families will never be the same. Our kids will never be the same. One of my favorite moments, I'm so glad you shared that, Dave, with me during this time, is families are actually sending their pics in, just like you described, with their whole family worshiping and doing the whole Summit Kids worship and worshiping during our adult time. And we've been putting those stories on our Instagram story page. And I just scroll through there and just weep on Sunday afternoons, just seeing our Summit families worshiping Jesus together. It's priceless, man. So, I'm very hopeful. I'm ticked that I'm an extrovert, so I'm ticked I'm having to sit at home by myself, but I'm hopeful at the same time.
Well, you're on a show with maybe an extrovert and a half. Adam is kind of that tweener.
Yeah. Most of my friends are tweeners. I get that.
Yeah, I'm doing just fine right now. Yeah, I think the interesting thing that I've seen too happen in the church is, you can get in this every Sunday kind of routine where you see everybody, you shake the hands, you say bye, have a good week, and then I'll see you next Sunday. I've seen a lot of churches start contact campaigns, reaching out to everybody should call 5 other people. And if you don't know their number, ask the office and just call and check on everybody. And, also check on people that don't go to church with you, and they're actively trying to make sure those connections exist. And hopefully that's the kind of thing that lives on after this too.
Yes.
Just making sure that we're all there for each other throughout all this whole thing.
Agreed.
Well, we'll wrap up with this, Paul, and this is probably going to be one that's going to take you. We didn't talk about this in our pre-show talking, but it won't be that hard. This is probably one of your subjects you love.
Here comes the curveball.
Here it goes. No, this isn't bad. Let's talk church post-coronavirus. This is all over. What can the church do to put what we've learned in these 2 to 3 months and put it into practice in, quote unquote, the real world? Yeah. This has just been a test tube, and then we take it out into the real world when we can touch people again and actually see people face to face.
Yep.
So what do we do May 1st? Let's say May 1st, because that's the goal I'm hoping for.
I love your optimism.
Well, I know. Adam's shaking his head too, but
I love it. Go for it.
When we get released, when the president and the WHO says, go forth.
You're free, go.
You're free. What does the church do differently than what we did before March 1st?
I'm journaling that question right now. It's going to be interesting. I do believe with all my heart it will be different, maybe forever, in a good way. And that's where I'm kind of focused right now is what can we learn from this, and what are we learning from this? I think a couple of things has come to light for us as leaders is, all along when we planned this church several years ago, our heart's been to equip the saints for the work of ministry. That we don't want to be a church that just hires professionals and puts on a show on Sundays and people come and appreciate it, enjoy it, maybe learn a little bit and then go back to their normal life and never grow themselves as disciples. And during this time, I think every disciple is having to learn to feed themselves a little more. And so one of the things that we've got to keep pressing into as the church is how do we equip each believer, each disciple on the ground to disciple their own family, to disciple people at work, to live their faith out, where it's not Sunday to Sunday's the lifeline. Sunday becomes more of a touch point celebration and gospel high five. And then Monday through Saturday, we get back into the grind and we live this thing out. And I think what this is causing us to do right now is to just be still a little bit, which the scriptures are pretty clear. We need to do that regularly. So if I was going to just kind of an initial short list, I'm praying this teaches us to slow down. I pray it teaches us to feed ourselves a little better, not depend on the professional. And for the church, I pray it teaches us how to be more effective and laser focused. Like ask the question, every single thing we're doing, is this creating disciples or is it creating consumers? And that's a scary question to ask. But for us, that's what we're coming out of this time is as we move forward, every single thing, every single program, every single gathering, every single training we're doing has to go through the lens. Is this going to create better, more effective disciples that's going to make disciples, or are we just creating this consistent on-ramp to consumerism that's not helping the church grow or the kingdom advance? So this time is really pushing us there, Dave, to think through that. And I believe the church will be stronger when we come out of this as far as our disciple-making systems go.
That's wow. You summed it up perfectly, and I appreciate you for that. This is a shorter show than we normally do. I think we're going to wrap it up there just because there's not much more we can talk about, right, Adam? I mean, I know, right?
I'm sitting here thinking about what the transition is, Dave, and
there's not. Paul, I'm going to brag on you for a second, okay? And this is just don't blush.
Don't do that, Dave.
Okay, I'm going to brag on God using you. How's that? Okay. I've been going to Summit. I've been going to Summit for a little over 2 years now, and I've been a Christian for 30 years of my life. I accepted Christ when I was 8, and every week that I go to Summit, I think I told Adam this earlier, under your preaching and God's tutelage in you, there has not been a Sunday when I have not left the building and looked at my wife and said, I didn't look at it. I've never looked at it that way. So I appreciate what God is doing through you in bringing new light to old passages that we've always heard. So, and I thank God for you, Paul. I think that I'm thankful that God has allowed me to come to Summit. We usually end the show promoting our podcast. We're not going to do that this week. I'm going to do two things. Paul, how could they find Summit if they're listening to us all throughout the country, or maybe somebody around the world? If somebody has picked up this podcast, how can they get a hold of Summit?
Sure, it's pretty easy. Just you got a website like everybody else. It's www.summitcrossing.org. We live stream every service. Every Sunday, not just during coronavirus, but we're always live streaming. We got a lot of resources on there that could help you in your walk. So we'd love to help any way we can. And there's places to reach out on our website if you need any help or any prayer. So yeah, just check our website out and reach out, and we'd love to hear from you. We've got people from all over that listen every week. We had people this week chiming in from Germany and Poland and India. It's pretty cool to see the gospel kind of go out to the ends of the earth. So yeah, if you're out there and need a church and someone to listen to, chime in to us. That'd be great.
There you go. And we'll say this, we'll talk to the rest of the podcast people next week. If you want to find us, you know how to do it. Not Related Bros on Twitter, Unrelated Birth on Instagram. Normally we end the show, I'll say something funny and Adam will say something funny, and we love you, but not as much as Jesus does. Not funny, that's the truth. But Paul, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to ask you, since we've had this wonderful talk about Christ and how Christ can, as we say, move to the kingdom, to the nations, or whatever, how we say it at Summit. I got stage fright with you here. Can you end the show in prayer, Paul?
Sure. Yeah, be glad to, Dave. And I just have one request. If you guys ever do like a college football episode, please let me join in on that. Bring me back. Let me talk about something fun. That'd be a blast.
Oh, done. We might talk about baseball too next time. Who knows?
Yeah, give me an easy one. Let me pray for
sir.
us. Thanks,
All right.
Dave. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Jesus, you are on the throne. We know that. We worship you. You are King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And in our world, we're facing some uncertain times, and I know a lot of fear that is wrecking people's lives. We know that you are God over those fears, and we pray that you would bring peace into our lives. We pray you'd bring healing to our country, to our land, to the world. And ultimately, Jesus, I pray that people look to you during this time, because it's in you where hope is found, where true love is experienced, where rest is experienced. And so I pray more than ever that the good news of the gospel will go out, and that people will see how wonderful you are, fall deeply in love with you, and their lives will be changed. Thank you for our conversation tonight. I pray it was honoring to you. And I pray, as we've said tonight, that your gospel will go out from our neighborhoods to the nations for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.